With the COVID-19 national state of disaster finally over, life is starting to return to normal. And with this, many employers are expecting the employees to return to the office. But after 2 years of working from home or with flexible schedules, this transition to full-time office work could be met with some resistance. For more on this, I'm joined by Advaita Naidoo, the MD for Jackhammers Africa's business. Advaita, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. Firstly, what will be the effect of the return to work mandates at short notice? I mean, won't this negatively impact workplaces?
Absolutely. I think when you drill down to it, there's probably three things that companies can expect when they take this type of top-down authoritarian approach. First, they could lose people, people who have other options or for whom a double income or a single income wasn't a make or break for them. The second thing is if they do stay, the companies run the risk of developing a very toxic workplace because while people may grudgingly return to work in the short term, they certainly won't do so productive or engaged, and that might almost be worse than if they had left in the first place. And then down the line, the company is going to struggle to attract really great talent because, other companies that are a bit more flexible will certainly have that advantage. And obviously, it goes without saying that impacts the company's bottom line.
Let's extend that sentiment. Everyone who will be returning to the office has been changed, or their lives have been changed during the past 2 years. And clearly, companies need to acknowledge that. And they're facing a period of transition, and that time for adjustment as well as consultation, well, I assume must be allowed at this time.
Absolutely. I think at the heart of it, we can't just make the mistake of thinking that this is about physically returning to work. It speaks a lot about company culture because there's nothing inherently wrong with being back in the office. Yeah. But what is the rationale when people have been doing this successfully for about 2 years? Were employees consulted? Have they been given time to adapt? And we're not just talking about the logistics here. It's not just about finding a new lift club for your child to go to school or working out a new cooking plan with your spouse. This is change management. The idea needs to marinate. You need to ask your stakeholders for suggestions. Give people time to think about the ways that it will impact them and allow them to figure it out and transition back, because I think that's the key word, transition.
I wanted to also take a look at international trends. There's been this phenomena in the U.S. and elsewhere in the world whereby large numbers of employees simply quit their jobs instead of returning to the office. What has been the effect of this so-called Great Resignation?
In South Africa, certainly there will be pockets where this is evident. For example, in digital work, employees have been used to working from home in hours that suit them, even in global roles. So they still have that choice and, could possibly resign from South African-based jobs for more flexible global jobs. Realistically, though, our conditions in South Africa, our socio-economic climate, it's so much more fragile than in developed countries. So that the attrition that we're going to see is going to be small by comparison. But, companies can't think that just a lack of choice gives them the advantage because, as I said earlier, the reasons that people may have wanted to leave, they will still be in place. There will be disengagement. There will be reduced productivity, and that has bigger challenges down the line.
But surely, Advaita, there might be lessons that can be learned from business leaders here back home to learn from the international experience.
Absolutely. I think, again, it's about consultation. So first, the question is, have you consulted with your team? Ask people what works for them because not everyone is geared for a 9-to-5 kind of job. Some people may be more productive from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. And being in the office does not lend itself to that. Find a rationale for why you're returning to work. Is it a place to go to just because it's a different place to plug in a laptop? Or is there a sense of purpose there? Are we doing it for meetings, for collaboration sessions, or, just for people to brainstorm next to each other? I think a big learning point is, as I said earlier, this transition, allowing people time to make the arrangements. But, something that we have been talking about a lot as a company, talking about employee wellness, just assuming that people are back and everything is back to normal and we've all resumed that state that we were in pre-COVID. It's naive to think that. We still need those check-ins that were so planned and scheduled and so top of mind at the height of the pandemic. They're no less important now, and frankly, we should be better at them at this stage.
But surely the socio-economic environment in South Africa means that while some people are indeed quitting, most don't have the luxury to do so, given the impact that this might have, especially on their livelihoods.
Absolutely, but I think it again comes down to that lack of productivity and disengagement. So certainly people will stay in their jobs and, they will do what they need to do, but at what cost is it coming? Is it coming at the cost of somebody's mental health? Is it coming at the cost of, that work-life balance that was so aspirational to us 2 to 3 years ago? Over the past 2 years, it felt that people were achieving that and suddenly becoming more productive or, far more passionate about what they were doing and available at times where they may not have been otherwise. And, while employers might get something out of their teams at this stage, there's a good chance that they're not going to be getting the best.
Now, in the beginning of our conversation, there are other scenarios that you mentioned that play themselves out beyond losing people, like developing a toxic work environment or failing to attract good people down the line. Please elaborate a bit further for us on this aspect.
Okay, so I guess the toxicity, again, it goes back to the lack of productivity or that disengagement. But, when you have where a mandate has been forced down on you and you haven't been consulted, this is about change management.
Right.
You're not going to get people who are so engaged and wanting to work together towards that common goal. And then about not being able to attract talent. Anecdotally, I can say that as a business, we're an executive search firm. We have business leaders reaching out to us and asking what the alternative options are at this stage, doing a temperature check on the market to assess which companies are not mandating the return to work or not doing it in such inflexible ways. So we are seeing a bit of a shift in the market. There's a frisson of dissatisfaction with the way things are playing out.
Yeah.
And while it may calm down in the months to come, you can't ignore what's happening right now.
Now, as we wrap up our conversation, I want to find out how can companies continue to provide more support services and also check-in sessions as done during the pandemic?
Well, I think it was done in a very purposeful way during the pandemic. There were scheduled and unscheduled Zoom calls that had nothing to do with work, where colleagues were just checking in on each other. I think the important thing to understand is that people are different and there is no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to having lasting physical or mental health advances. We need to tailor what we offer to our teams. We need to make resources available to them, either in the form of counseling or really just somebody to talk to. And then again, in those logistical arrangements, understanding that people's lives have changed in the interim and allowing them time to figure